You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network reaction episode. And thanks to those who are always making us their first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, here we are again. A home opportunity in the books that you did not take advantage of as it goes the wrong way for Texas Tech as K-State tops the Red Raiders. And really, as far as the final score is concerned, that's one thing to digest, Chris, but all the things that led to that final score, pretty much a whole nother meal entirely. We've got defense going the wrong way to talk about. We've got a frustrating night offensively, but then beyond that, of course, we have a quarterback conversation to get into as far as the health of Baron Morton moving forward. And I truly mean rinse and repeat, because this felt like, for me as a fan, so many other Kansas State experiences where you're trading some blows. But I've said this before, once again, at the end of the night, you look up and it's a 2-possession margin, or what? It was 9, I think, last year. And you think, wow, were we ever really in the game? So unfortunately kind of practiced in this experience with the Purple Wildcats, but a new story to tell, as it's always something new with the Red Raiders, isn't it?
Yeah, whenever you get your schedule this season, whenever it was the last January or whatever, and you figure out who you're playing and who you're not going to play. I can't remember when the football schedule came out, but I wouldn't have been sad at all if Kansas State wasn't on it. I would say that going forward next year, when you expand to 16, if they don't want to put Kansas State on your schedule, that it won't bother me. But I think 12 out of 13. Yeah, your only win was in 2015. So yeah, I feel like we've just seen this movie a million different times, and you always feel like you're in the game, but then you're not, and you never win it. It doesn't seem like. So you've made a habit out of losing to Kansas State, and it's always the most frustrating because they never necessarily out talent you, but they always just out execute you and out discipline you, and they ended up always winning.
Yep.
And man, you're talking quarterbacks. You get into these conversations, and we did together July and August, and you're trying to figure out what your team is going to be. You're trying to okay, man, I think you can, floors and ceilings, and we're all talking about these things. And in no way in my wildest dreams, and maybe shame on me, I should have thought about this, but in no way did I thought Jake Strong would be taking meaningful snaps in a crucial game in mid-October. But here we are.
That is exactly right. And as we said, whenever Tyler Shuck went down, Strong is now on the precipice of having the nuclear codes within a blink. He's the man, no longer the backup man. And we'll wait until the week develops to kind of see how we feel about Baron Morton's status. I was glad to hear some optimism, sounded like post-game, from Joey McGuire about his availability moving forward. Did I hear that incorrectly? I don't want to declare anything, Chris, but I thought there was some optimism.
So let me take you through how we experienced it in real time, and just when we'll get to the end and kind of just surmise or yeah, but then there's some things that Joey said after the game. But I think there was a hit that Baron took, letting go of a pass. He got hit in the ribs. It wasn't necessarily the shoulder. He was very slow to get up. I witnessed him on one of the plays let go of a pass, and then he goes down, and boy, his head bangs off the turf. And again, we're just watching kids play football, so you don't really know. He kept playing. Then there was a play. This was mid-second quarter, and it was a 3rd and long, and he scrambles out to the Tech sideline and didn't throw it away, and it ended up being like a 1-yard loss, so it goes down as a sack. But he gets popped pretty good right there going out of bounds, and he was slow to get up. So you combine all these things. Then he's over on the, Brian and John were up in the booth during the broadcast, and they kept saying, hey, he's sitting in a chair next to Zach Kitley, and his head's down, and there's a lot of one-on-one conversations going. And so, okay, is he really frustrated? Is he dinged up? Is something wrong? And it's probably all the above. And so, and then you notice there was a couple of those easy, wide receiver screens that he threw way behind, or he floated. Even one pass to Coy Aiken that ended up being caught, he throws it into double coverage, and it seems seemingly very underthrown. So he just wasn't super crisp. Coy Aiken ended up catching that pass. I thought he made a good throw to Xavier White when Xavier White was interfered with, and he ended up making the play, and you get the ball down to like the 1 yard line. And so, but it wasn't just super crisp, and he was just a bit inaccurate, which is not like him in some of these easier throws. And then he never appeared from the locker room. And I could think you could speculate. Did he take a hit to the head? Is it his shoulder? Was it his ribs? Is it a combination of both? Who knows? But I thought what was curious is that he wasn't out there in the entire second half. We never saw him again. And so was this treatment? Was this I don't know. And so I didn't know what Joey would tell me. We just were told a tech official indicated to the broadcast, undisclosed injury, will not return. And so that's what we passed along. And that was, I guess, early in the third quarter when we just didn't see him. And then after the game is over, when my conversation with Joey, I'm like, first, coach, we just kind of talked through it. I was like, can you give everybody an update on Barron? And he said, it's a shoulder issue. We didn't feel comfortable putting him back out there. And then he would go on to tell the assembled media and kind of let everybody kind of in the know that he's been dealing with this shoulder problem since West Virginia, really. And he hasn't practiced a ton in these last, 2 to 3 weeks. And so I think with all of that, they just feel like, okay, he can't be effective because of his shoulder. But they also indicated that it was an accumulation of things. It wasn't just the one thing. So it makes me wonder about when you're talking about shoulder, well, it's a bunch of things. So what are the other things? But then he does say, as you mentioned, he's got a good chance to start. And so I talking about against BYU. So I'm not real sure, man. I'm not real sure what we would expect to see. I think if I'm BYU, I'm preparing for either one of these guys to start. And if you're, you would either have Baron Morton and Jake Strong, or you're going to have Jake Strong and Brady Boyd, a wide receiver, being your backup. That's what it's going to look like. And if Baron plays, what level is he at? Is he compromised at all? I don't know. But unfortunately that's where we're at. And we should be used to this, but it just is amazing to me that it continues, because you potentially are on the cusp of having to start 3 different quarterbacks in back-to-back seasons. And that is just not a recipe for winning or getting into a rhythm, figuring out an offensive identity, figuring out how to call it, figuring out what guy is good at what. And then it's just maddening, but you just feel like you're just snake bit, cursed. I don't know. Pick your term.
When you're playing 3 different quarterbacks and back to, I don't know what's not impacted. I mean, concession stand sales are down. The horses sitting the game out, for crying out loud. We got the trike back out there for Raider Red. Hotel sales are down. Podcast energy is down. Yeah, right. Mine's at an all-time high. Even if it's rooted in anger, still very energetic on this Sunday reaction episode, Chris. A lot of frustration, man. And you feel for Jake Strong, who went out there and I thought performed admirably. But before we move on to what happened after Baron Morton, am I hearing correctly that this was another week now gone by where he was like involved for a singular day of practice, or not at all? Or
he just said he hasn't practiced much, and I think the flip side is I think Jake Strong has gotten a lot of reps with the first team over the last couple of 3 weeks. And so I don't, I'm not there. I don't know the percentages or number of plays, but I think it's been about trying to give Barron as much rest as you can in between these games. But the flip side is it's hard to go play when you haven't repped it a bunch and you haven't, the timing and the chemistry and all those things. It's probably also hard to develop a game plan when you're not sure what your starter can and can't do because you haven't seen it the whole week. You know what I mean? Or haven't seen a lot of it the whole week. And so again, I'm just, we're piercing words here on some of those things, but I think the flip side is for Jake, he has gotten many more reps than you would have thought, just because of, I think, Barron's situation, and he's been pushed into the backup spot for the last 3 weeks. And so, and Jake was here in the spring, which helps him too, but it's just it's just frustrating, because at some point you do have to throw it, and maybe they threw it too much in the second half, against Kansas State, trying to loosen it up, and that was the other thing is, like, let's go back and think about this part. How many times did you really try to stretch the field in the first half with Barron in there? Because I just remember the 2 throws down the field. One was to Coy Aiken, underthrown. Coy makes a play on it, but there's 2 Kansas State Wildcats there. The other one is a one-on-one situation with Xavier White. Again, he's interfered with. You do make that play. Other than that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you really threw the ball down the field past that. And it makes you wonder, is that because Barron can't, or they're not comfortable with that? Because then go back to last week, the one interception that he threw underthrown on a deeper ball. Does he just, because I think he's been dealing with the shoulder issue, and if you don't have a lot of juice in there and you can't let it rip, and I think the frustrating thing for Tech is, the one thing I think you thought you could maybe take advantage of Kansas State-wise on defense was their corners. They have one starter out. They had one starter that missed the previous week, who was playing, I think, at a less than 100% last night. And the way their scheme is, they're going to give you a lot of one-on-one shots, on the edge. That's where, you kind of feel like, okay, we like our advantages here. And I thought when Jake came in there, they did try to stretch the field, but maybe they did it too much. I don't know. But I think maybe at that point, it's like, okay, let's try to take some of these shots. We can get some PI calls, or let our guys make some 50-50 plays or whatever it is. So, anyway, it equals a loss. It's just
that was wild. Yeah. That was wild. The bombs I saw in the second half of the freshman quarterback, and it was even wilder to consider after the game when you hear Joey McGuire talking about Jake Strong, I think, checking in to these option plays, indicating he's got that leeway at the line of scrimmage, which was a surprise to me, at least something I didn't expect for a guy inserted in at that point. But when he makes the 54-yard run, I'm thinking, wow, they didn't expect it, because who would expect speed option from the last quarterback available?
He called his own. He called his own number there. Yeah,
so right. I was wondering also about some of the bombs, which I blame Kansas State for playing a safety. That's their fault. If they would just had 10 guys out there and not played the safety, those may have been great plays. I don't know, but they kept playing that safety, damn it. But the bombs, I'm wondering too, like, who's calling this? Because it was kind of shocking to see, particularly on 4th and 2 down the sideline. And
yes,
it's just always hard to know what's happening at the line of scrimmage or what's happening under the headset, from the sideline. But do you feel like there was more of a, hey, we're sticking with what we want to do when Strong goes in the game? Or was there some thought that we've got to really adjust a game plan now offensively with the freshman quarterback? What feel did you have for that transition?
I've in talking to Joey and Zach throughout the season, I think they have a lot of confidence in Jake, and he can run the whole playbook. I think he's, again, because he was here in the spring, he's probably more advanced than a normal true freshman quarterback. And I know that, and I have no idea on how many plays were checked to and from and what you got in and out of. I don't know. I just know the philosophy there is, if you don't give your quarterback this freedom, you feel like you are got him up there with his hand tied behind his back, and that you're trying to call the perfect play. If you don't give them some freedom and some options, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's their philosophy. That's what they believe in, and that's what. But again, is there some reins on him? I don't know how much of this that he did, but we gleaned that from last night, is that he called his own deal on the speed option, and again, I think the throws to the outside deep are easier for a younger player, because it's the ones over the middle that's what's scary, because then there's a lot of coverage, and he's a young kid. Yeah. He's going to make some freshman mistakes. There's just a lot of crowd, and Kansas State's good on defense. This is one of the better defenses you'll see. It was just a tough spot for him to be in.
Here's your first action, and by the way, it ain't Baylor over there anymore.
No. State. Yeah. I mean, and like, And people had asked about this too, because there's been a lot of talk about play calling, right? That's just what we do at Texas Tech. But I thought in the first half, when Barron was in there, you got really creative with the play calling in the goal line or in the red zone in the goal line situation. You had like the almost the swinging gate type formation, and Barron was just, right there. It was just him in the center, and it's kind of like, okay, we can either throw it to one of these guys or I can run it or whatever. You had the Bush push with Teeter pushing Morton into the end zone. Some things we had not really seen before. And I think you have to get creative because, and then I think Taj Brooks late in the game, he did get in the end zone. Or I guess that was right at the end of the half. But Kansas State, so you scored 2 touchdowns on them in the red zone. That was their 4th and 5th touchdowns they had given up in the red zone all season. They were, I think, 3 of 13. Teams had gotten in the red zone 13 times leading to that point, and they had only allowed 3 touchdowns. It's second in the country. So their defense gets really salty the shorter the field. And so that's why you're trying to give yourself an advantage, because it's just they're hard to run on anyway. And then I think I think the play calling on some of those creative situations, that was why. Just because Kansas State's really good, but you got them for a couple of touchdowns. But
you know me, I'm always holding out hope we're going to see that power eye or that triple power eye Texas team make a return. But the watch is still on. I've yet to see it return. But you want to talk about the trouble you got facing the K-State defense, and then compound that with the freshman quarterback later in the game. But you got trouble in every direction. And I know another proud tradition in West Texas. You get sliced and diced, done every which way but right defensively, giving up over 200 yards rushing, and then I'm ready to fire the offensive coordinator. It's just what we do. So don't be mad at us. By the way, have you noticed an omission of talking about that rush defense? Well, it's on purpose because we just ain't got enough damn time to figure out what happened on that side on this episode. So come back tomorrow on Monday. We're going to hear from Joey McGuire regarding what happened defensively, because I'm almost willing to bet, Chris, that regardless of what you have done with the quarterback swap or some other things offensively, if you're going backwards that much as a defense, particularly against a ground game, which really allows the team to take control of a game and finish a game, boy, it's going to be tough sledding. So let's get into that tomorrow. I think we still need a little light on this Sunday, so we'll save that for a Monday tune-up. And we'll also talk about the ground game and how moving forward that could evolve into something that maybe you're using more or not to cover for your quarterback, because even if it's Morton, maybe we're expecting still a hobbled number 2. I don't know how we kind of avoid that reality, Chris. Even if you see him out there, you're wondering, all right, what percentage are we talking, right?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And just we don't know what we don't know. And I think that they still don't know and may not know fully until kind of the week goes along on how he feels, what all ails him, and kind of what that looks like, and how much can you practice? And if you can practice and play, what can we do with you? What are you going to be good at? Or are you catering this thing to – because you'll have to make a decision pretty early in the week, I would guess, so you can kind of try to cater what you want to do around who you're going to be with. So I don't know, man. It's tricky. You need a win. You're below 500, and you're running out of opportunities now just to try to become bowl eligible. And you got a bye week coming up, so this is an important one this weekend.
Yes, the gift that we have for you now, a night game in Provo, Utah, which should be just a bucket of fun. So getting ready for that one as the week rolls on, and back to what we saw on Saturday as we kick off the week tomorrow with some sound from Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire. As I mentioned, we'll talk defense, we'll talk ground game, and all things in between. Goes the wrong way, but we're here to sort it out with you throughout the week. Hope you'll join us. Chris, appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it as much as possible, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Glad to be back. Hopefully better times ahead.
That's right. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you don't miss those better times ahead. Somewhere out there, I don't know, in a subsequent generation, there will be some somewhere. For Chris, I'm Casey. Hope to see you on the other side on Locked On Texas Tech.